Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered, am I enough? Not just as a man, but as a partner, a lover, a human being trying to measure up to a world that never stops comparing? Because let's be honest, in today's culture, men are judged by numbers. Numbers on a paycheck, numbers on a scale, and yes, the number between their legs. For years, I've seen the quiet shame that question creates. It doesn't show up in loud confessions. It hides in silence, in late-night searches, in the way a man looks away when intimacy starts to feel like a test instead of a connection. I've watched husbands, boyfriends, even widowers in their 60s and 70s carry that same fear. What if I don't measure up? I understand why. Social media movies and half-true jokes have turned a private worry into a public humiliation. And when every meme and every ad screams that bigger is better, it's no wonder so many good men lose confidence before they even begin. But here's what almost no one tells you: science doesn't agree. In fact, what the data reveals is the exact opposite of what culture preaches. And if you've spent years comparing yourself, you might be living under a myth that has quietly stolen your confidence for decades. So in this conversation, I want to show you what the research really says about size, what women actually prefer, and the habits that quietly rebuild confidence, no matter your age or measurement. Because once you see the truth, you'll realize the thing you feared most might have never been the problem at all. For years, I believed that if men only knew the numbers, their fears would vanish. Then I realized something deeper: fear doesn't disappear with information alone. It fades when truth replaces illusion. Every week, I meet men who whisper the same question, terrified of the answer. They pull out phones, show charts, compare, measure stress. Some haven't even looked a partner in the eyes in months because shame built an invisible wall between them. Let me tell you the truth that rarely makes headlines, according to large-scale data from the British Journal of Urology International and the University of California. The average erect length is about 5.16 inches, and the average girth around 4.6 inches. Now, here's the twist. The majority of women privately surveyed say they prefer sizes within that exact range. Why? Because sex isn't a physics competition. It's communication through skin breath and trust. I sometimes compare it to music. Volume doesn't make a song, better harmony does. The same principle applies to intimacy. The right rhythm matters far more than the size of the instrument. If that sounds surprising, wait until you hear how the media engineered this insecurity on purpose. I grew up in the same culture you did: movies that brag, ads that promise, and late-night jokes that turn insecurity into entertainment. It's no accident. The adult film industry alone spends billions shaping impossible expectations, and social media ads filters angles, and camera tricks that distort reality. The result: millions of men comparing themselves to fiction. A Harvard psychology review found that repeated exposure to exaggerated imagery increases body dissatisfaction by nearly 27%, even when participants know the images are fake. It's like watching superhero movies and then hating yourself for not flying. When I tell my patients this, there's often silence, then a small laugh of relief, because realizing you've been tricked is strangely empowering. You stop blaming yourself for something that was never true. Here's the mental shift I teach: stop being the audience of insecurity and start being the author of confidence. Block the pages and feeds that feed the lie. Replace them with truth movement and humor that actually makes you feel alive. But media myths aren't the only trap. The next one hides inside the word performance. When I ask women in counseling sessions what they value most in intimacy, their top answers aren't size or even appearance. They say comfort, connection, and feeling safe. The female body is designed for balance, not battle. Too much girth or aggressive depth can trigger pain instead of pleasure. One study from the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that Over 60% of women report discomfort when intercourse is too deep, while nearly 70% say emotional trust enhances sensation more than any physical trait. That means how you connect changes what both partners feel. I often tell men slow is the new strong. Think of intimacy like driving a classic car. You don't floor it out of the garage. You learn the gears, the sound, the rhythm. When you tune in, everything runs smoother. And here's the bonus, women. Remember, emotional safety far longer than physical intensity. When a man listens, adjusts, and respects boundaries, his presence becomes more magnetic than any measurement. Which brings us to another silent mistake, assuming every woman wants the same thing. One of the most liberating findings in modern sex research is this: female preference is personal, not universal. Some women are more sensitive internally, others respond more to external touch or emotional cues. Studies from the Kinsey Institute show subtle variations. Women who experience vaginal orgasms may lean slightly toward above average length, around 6 to 6.5 inches, but the word slightly is key. In reality, variety keeps attraction alive. What most women rate highest in satisfaction surveys isn't physical proportion, but communication, quality, and aftercare. Translation: talking, checking in, laughing, being present. I remember counseling a couple married for 30 years. The husband kept apologizing for his size. The wife interrupted, saying, "I've never cared about that. I just wanted him to stop turning off the lights." That line changed him more than any pill could. Here's a truth men often forget: desire grows where judgment dies. When you replace comparison with curiosity, you give both bodies permission to relax and enjoy. Still, none of this matters if your health quietly undermines your confidence from the inside out. Erections aren't just about arousal, they're about circulation hormones and nerve communication. Think of your body like a small city. Blood vessels are highways, hormones are the power grid, and stress is the traffic jam. If the highways clog or the power flickers, downtown goes dark. A landmark study from the American Journal of Cardiology found that men with chronic dehydration or high blood pressure were 50% more likely to experience erectile difficulties. Another from Harvard linked poor sleep to 15% lower testosterone in just 1 week. The data is clear. Confidence doesn't live in your pants. It lives in your lifestyle. So start simple, hydrate early, move daily, and protect your sleep as fiercely as your paycheck. Each habit improves circulation and hormone balance more than any quick fix supplement. I tell my patients, a confident body is a maintained machine. Oil. The joints clear, the pipes update the software. You can't expect premium performance on expired fuel. And yet, even with perfect health, one hidden enemy can still sabotage everything: anxiety. I've watched anxiety steal more pleasure than aging ever could. The moment fear walks into the bedroom, blood flow leaves. That's not a metaphor, it's physiology. When cortisol rises, testosterone drops, vessels constrict, the body switches from pleasure mode to survival mode. Many men tell me they feel like observers during intimacy, watching themselves fail instead of experiencing connection. I remind them, the body follows the brain. If your thoughts say, "I'm not enough," your physiology obeys. To reverse that, I teach confidence rituals, simple, grounded actions that retrain your nervous system. Breathe deeply before intimacy. Keep the lights low, but your eyes open. Focus on your partner's breath, not your performance. These steps sound small, yet neurobiology shows mindful presence increases satisfaction scores by up to 42% in couples therapy studies. And here's the beautiful irony: the moment you stop chasing performance, performance returns. So, if size, media myths, and fear aren't the real villains, what actually builds lasting confidence? When I ask men what confidence feels like most, describe a fantasy walking into a room and owning it, never doubting, never hesitating. But real confidence isn't noise, it's quiet certainty. It's the calm that comes from knowing you don't need to prove anything. And confidence, like muscle, is trained. The good news, science shows it's built through small, repeated wins, not dramatic transformations. A Stanford neuroscience paper found that celebrating micro successes releases dopamine, the same chemical tied to motivation and sexual desire. So every time you keep a promise to yourself, hydrating, exercising, sleeping, you literally rewire your brain to expect success. Confidence becomes chemical, not mythical. Think of it like compound interest, small deposits, daily grow into something unstoppable. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need consistency. But before you start adding habits, there's one belief you have to delete the idea that confidence starts in the mirror. Most men try to fix the outside, first lose the belly, lift heavier, look younger. Those goals are fine, but they're incomplete. Confidence doesn't start with appearance, it starts with identity. In cognitive psychology, we call it embodied perception, the brain's ability to change how you feel based on how you act. When you stand taller, breathe slower, and speak with warmth, your nervous system reads those cues as truth. Harvard's power pose studies might be controversial, yet they revealed a simple fact: posture and presence alter hormone balance within minutes, testosterone up, cortisol down. That's why I tell my patients, act the way you want to feel, and your body will eventually catch up. The mirror doesn't give you confidence. It reflects the confidence you practice. So, how do you practice confidence in a world that keeps trying to sell you shame? Every man I've treated who regained his spark did so through ritual, not randomness. A ritual tells your brain, we're safe, we're capable, we're ready. Here's what I recommend: simple, science-backed, and entirely free. Morning reset: before checking your phone, drink a full glass of water. Dehydration thickens blood and reduces circulation. Two things your vitality depends on. One clinical trial in Colorado found that rehydration improved endothelial function, that's vessel flexibility, by 24% within hours. Movement, it doesn't have to be has to be the gym. A 20-minute brisk walk increases nitric oxide opening blood vessels naturally. Think of it as a tune-up for the body's engine. Evening wind down 30 minutes before bed, dim lights, no screens. Sleep is your testosterone factory. 1 week of 5-hour nights can cut T levels by up to 15%. Reclaiming rest is cheaper than any supplement on the market. Routines don't restrict freedom, they create it. When your body runs smoothly, your mind stops fighting itself. But confidence isn't only physical, it's deeply emotional, and it often hides behind unspoken wounds. Behind almost every anxious man is a teenage boy who once heard a cruel comment, maybe from a locker room joke, maybe from an ex, maybe from a silence that felt like rejection. That moment planted a seed of doubt that grew for decades. Neuroscience confirms emotional memory outlasts factual memory. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, doesn't forget humiliation easily. It replays old tapes when stress rises, convincing you that history will repeat. To break that loop, we use what therapists call cognitive reframing, changing the story your mind tells. When the old voice whispers, "I'm not enough," answer with evidence, your partner's smile, your kindness, your resilience, you're building a new mental pathway every time you choose truth over trauma. And if you've been carrying guilt or shame about your performance, remember the body forgives faster than the brain. Once you give yourself permission to start fresh, everything else begins to heal. Still, emotional healing grows stronger when you have proof that you're making progress, proof you can actually see and feel. One of the most underrated tools in men's health is feedback. We measure everything else miles per gallon. Golf, scores, credit scores, but rarely track what matters most. Energy mood connection, I tell my patients to keep a confidence log. Each night, jot down 3 wins. Maybe you went for that walk. Maybe you stayed present during intimacy. Maybe you simply spoke kindly to yourself. Why does this matter? Because pattern recognition changes biology. A UCLA study found that gratitude journaling reduced cortisol by 23% after 3 weeks. Lower stress, sonks, better blood flow, better sleep, better intimacy. Progress isn't about perfection. It's about momentum. Every checkmark tells your brain, I'm rebuilding. But progress isn't sustainable without purpose. And purpose is where maturity outshines youth. Men often chase supplements for stamina, but meaning is the most potent fuel you'll ever find. When you wake up with a reason, someone to love something, to build a legacy, to leave your body follows. Studies from Johns Hopkins link purpose-driven living to 19% higher testosterone and 30% lower mortality risk over 10 years. Purpose literally keeps you alive longer. I've seen widowers start volunteering and notice morning vitality return within weeks. Not because their bodies changed overnight, but because their hearts did. Motivation sends messages to every cell. Life is worth showing up for. Your partner feels that difference too. Passion powered by purpose feels grounded, not desperate. It's strength mixed with peace. And that peace becomes magnetic when you learn the final piece of the puzzle: presence. Presence is confidence's twin. It's what turns intimacy from motion into meaning. When you're fully present, anxiety has no room to live. Presence isn't mystical, it's mechanical. Breathing deeply activates the vagus nerve, slowing heart rate and redirecting blood to your core. That's biology, not poetry. Try this before intimacy. Inhale slowly for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Repeat until your shoulders drop. That single adjustment signals your body, I'm safe. Safe turns into open. Open turns into connection. Couples therapy data from the University of Texas found that mindful breathing during intimacy increased mutual satisfaction by 42%. So the next time your mind wanders to fear or comparison, bring it back to the moment, the warmth, the touch, the reality of being here now. Because once you master presence, you unlock the truth that ties everything together. Confidence was never about size. It was always about connection. Confidence built on connection doesn't fade with age, it matures. I've watched men in their 70s rediscover vitality, not by chasing youth, but by understanding it was never lost. It was waiting behind stress, behind comparison, behind noise. And now that you know how the myths fall apart and what truly rebuilds strength, it's time to look at the bigger picture, the mindset that keeps it all alive long after the lights go out. Because when you understand where confidence truly begins, that's when the healing becomes permanent. Here's the truth I wish every man could hear. Early in life, confidence doesn't arrive when you achieve something. It arrives when you accept yourself enough to take action. Most men think they need to fix their body before they can feel worthy. But what if worthiness isn't a reward? It's the foundation. When you start from acceptance, improvement feels exciting instead of exhausting. In my clinic, I've seen men transform faster when they stop chasing an ideal and start honoring progress. One man told me, when I stopped worrying about being impressive and focused on being present, everything worked again. That's the power of mindset. Confidence isn't the fire, it's the spark that ignites the fire. And once it's lit, it keeps you warm, far beyond the bedroom. But how do you hold on to that spark when life throws stress, aging, or setbacks your way? Resilience is what separates temporary boosts from lasting power. The men who stay confident aren't the ones who never fall, they're the ones who bounce back faster. Physiology explains it. Chronic stress raises cortisol, which blocks testosterone production. Yet, resilience training, breathing, reframing gratitude lowers cortisol naturally. You don't need a prescription to build resilience. You just need practice. Think of stress like waves. You can't stop the ocean, but you can learn to surf. Every time you face a difficult conversation, financial worry, or health scare, remind yourself this is a rep in the gym of emotional strength, and resilience is contagious. Your calm becomes your partner's calm. Your steadiness tells her, I'm here, we're okay. That kind of energy is irresistible. Still, resilience isn't built in isolation. It thrives in connection with others. One of the most consistent findings across longevity research from Harvard's 75-year study on adult development is that men who maintain close emotional relationships have higher life satisfaction, better cardiovascular health, and lower rates of depression. Translation connection isn't just good for your heart, metaphorically, it literally protects it. Yet, many men withdraw when they feel inadequate. They stop reaching out to friends, stop laughing, stop being vulnerable. I've seen this isolation erode confidence more than any physical change ever could. Confidence grows in community. When you talk, share, and laugh with others, your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone that reduces stress and strengthens trust. It's like nature's reminder you were never meant to carry this alone. And that trust doesn't just heal the heart, it rebuilds performance in ways you can actually measure. During intimacy, the brain releases a cocktail of chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, all triggered by emotional safety. When you and your partner trust each other, your nervous system shifts from defense to desire. That's why the couples who feel emotionally safe report up to 60% greater physical satisfaction, according to research from the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy. In simpler terms, emotional security increases physical ability. You can't perform your way to trust. You build trust, and performance follows naturally. I often tell my patients foreplay isn't something that starts in bed. It starts in how you make your partner feel every day. Kindness, patience, laughter, those are the real performance enhancers, which leads us to the final key: redefining masculinity for yourself, not by society's outdated checklist. Masculinity isn't a fixed shape, it's a living definition you get to write daily. For too long, men were told strength means silence, control, or dominance. But the new strength, the strength I see in my most fulfilled patients, is gentleness with power, confidence without ego, presence without pretending. True masculinity is self-regulated energy. It's the man who can lift weights in the morning, hold his partner's hand in the evening, and cry when life breaks his heart, then get up the next day and keep going. That's not weakness, that's mastery. When you redefine masculinity, comparison loses its grip. You no longer measure yourself by inches, income, or age. You measure by integrity, by consistency, by the peace you bring into a room. And the irony that energy, calm, grounded, emotionally aware, is the most attractive thing a man can carry. So after all this, what's the one lesson I want every man to walk away with? It's simple, but it changes everything. You were never broken. What you thought was a flaw was often just misinformation and stress wearing confidence thin. When men finally learn that their value isn't measured in inches, but in intention, the pressure lifts. Blood flows better, energy returns, connection deepens. That's not psychology, it's biology, responding to peace. Every breath you take with self-acceptance tells your body, we're safe now. Safe enough to relax, to connect, to feel. That's the secret. No supplement can sell. Peace creates performance. And peace leads us straight into, the closing truth, the one that redefines confidence for the rest of your life. When I look back on all the men I've helped, from anxious 20-somethings to widowed veterans in their 70s, the common thread isn't age, wealth, or even health. It's willingness. The willingness to unlearn shame, to ask for truth, to try again with an open heart. Confidence doesn't belong to the young or the bold. It belongs to the honest. And honesty starts here in moments like this, where you finally see that what you thought was the problem never really was. Now that you know how the myths unravel, how science supports you, and how connection rewires confidence, you're ready for the final step, the part where we stop talking about confidence and start living it. Because once a man understands his worth beyond measurement, he doesn't just change how he performs, he changes how he lives. So here's what I want you to remember after everything we've talked about. Your worth as a man was never defined by a number, a comparison, or a cultural script written by people who don't even know you. It was defined the moment you started showing up with honesty, curiosity, and care. Confidence isn't a trophy you chase. It's a muscle you build through daily choices, the water you drink, the way you breathe, the moments you stay kind when it would be easier to hide. It's the courage to speak gently when the world tells you to be louder. It's being strong enough to listen, patient enough to learn, and brave enough to love. Science can measure blood flow hormones and neural responses, but it can't measure what really makes you magnetic presence, the quiet steadiness that says, I'm here, I'm safe, you're safe with me. That's the kind of confidence no pill, no pump, no quick fix can replicate. If you take only one thing from this conversation, let it be this: you are enough when you decide to be. And when you live from that truth, your relationships, your energy, even your health begin to rise to meet it, because your body follows your belief. The mind leads, the heart fuels, and the body responds. That's not poetry. That's biology at peace with itself. So tonight, before you go to bed, take one quiet minute to thank your body for everything it's carried you through. The scars, the lessons, the mistakes, the resilience. You've made it this far, and that means there's still more waiting for you, more confidence, more vitality, and more connection. I hope this message lifted something heavy off your shoulders, even just a little. If it did, don't let it fade. Save this video, come back to it whenever doubt tries to sneak back in, because sometimes hearing the truth twice helps it sink in deeper. And if you believe more men deserve to hear the science and truth behind confidence, share this with a friend. You never know whose life it might quietly change. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because every week I share evidence-based ways to protect your confidence, your energy, and your health as you age. We talk about real men's health, circulation, hormones, prostate, vitality, mindset without shame, stigma, or sales tricks. Before you go tell me in the comments what part of this message hit home for you the most. I read every single one, and I'd love to know your story. Remember, this aging isn't the enemy, neglect is. So take care of yourself, stay curious, stay confident, and stay kind, because the best years of your health aren't behind you. They're waiting right in front of you.